Now we turn to the panel discussion, and I encourage all participants also to make comments and ask questions in the chat. So Margot is back, and I'm also happy to invite to the floor Antonin Chaplot from the Coalition for Energy Savings and Christos Tokolias from CRES in Greece. And so we've seen the background, so what has changed is now how the new policy framework is. And I think everybody has in mind that now the next step is going to implementation. That's probably the main motto for the next commission. But before that, getting things implemented, as Sam said, there is a time to revise and adapt the current policies in every member state. And I know that at the coalition, Antonio, you're working on that. You are a policy advisor and expert on the EED. And let's tell us a bit the results of your first analysis about the draft NECP updates that the member state were to submit by last June. As Margot mentioned, that's one of the key milestones for them to revise their policies. And yes, we would be interested to know a bit more about that.
Sure. Thank you, Jean-Sébastien. Hello, everyone. So, as said by Jean-Sébastien, I'm Antonin Chaplot from the Coalition for Energy Savings. It's really, for me, there's a bit of 3 steps. So we really had the revision of the legislation. There's implementation, which is really concrete measure on the ground. And you could say that the middle step is also the planning of those measures and what member states are planning to do to now put into the real world the new obligation that we just had presented. So as Jean-Sébastien said, we worked at the coalition on the draft update of the National Energy and Climate Plans, and we published a report that all look at, not all of them because not all of them are there yet, but look at the first 15 draft NECPs that were submitted. So I'll just share my screen now so I can show you exactly what I mean. So I hope you can see, I have just 2 slides to present. I hope you can see them. I think so.
Yes.
Great.
That's full screen.
Great. So indeed, we published a report. It was now a couple of weeks ago that looks at the first 15 submitted draft NECPs, as I mentioned. I think now we're at 21, if I'm not mistaken. I think more will come in next weeks, but it has to be kept in mind that the deadline for those draft NECPs was on the 30th of June. So we're already quite late in the deadline, and it's very important that member states are submitting those plans because also they need to be assessed by the Commission, and we'll have a country-specific recommendation on those plans by the end of December. So really, this is really important because this is the way that we see how member states are willing to put and are going to put those new obligations into practice. We analyzed 15 because that's the 15 we had when we finalized the analysis on the 30th of September. And really the point of this report that we made is to see how member states are planning to adapt to the new energy efficiency directive requirements that Margot presented. We really focused on the 5 articles which are the core of the coalition work. So these are Article 3 on the energy efficiency first principle, Article 4 on the energy efficient targets, Article 5 on the public sector obligation, Article 6 on the renovation requirement for public buildings, and Article 8, the one we're discussing today, on the energy savings obligation. And the way we did this, again, I'm not going to go in too many details. You can find the report on our website if you'd like to have a look. But it's really, we check the compliance of member state according to each article, and based on each, let's say, sectoral compliance, we made an overall assessment of the plan with its assessment compared to the new EED rules. Unfortunately, and of course, that's also understandable because those are draft updates. The final updates will come on the 30th of June next year. But our overall assessment is that no draft plan that we assessed out of the 15 is fully compliant with the new EED rules. There's some plans that are doing better than others, of course. And again, here you have all the details in the report, but no plan and no countries that are, let's say, compliant on all of the points of those articles and all of the new obligations. So this is in a nutshell what we assessed in the report. And I can, of course, because this is a topic of today, I can explain to you a little bit what we found and our analysis of the plans when it comes to the energy savings obligation. So on the right side, you have the map of Europe with within colors the plans we assessed, and you have the graduation of the plans that we assessed, going from not updated. So this is the member state that submitted a draft NECP, but in the draft NECP either didn't say anything about the new EED or said that they know that the new EED has been adopted, but they didn't yet update their NECP to reflect the new EED. So this is, let's say, the countries that we couldn't assess because there was nothing to assess with the new EED. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is, let's say, it's going to be very unambitious and insufficient plans. It just means that there was nothing to assess at the moment we did the analysis in the draft NECPs. And you see that then it goes from partially updated, which is quite weak, until compliant, which is 8 points. And as you can see on Article 8, we didn't grade any member states that we analyzed as full in compliance, because there was always 1 or 2 points missing, even for the ones that were almost compliant, as you see, which is the light yellow. What I can say in terms of more specifically, so to come back, let's say, on the new rules and how those were introduced in the plans, we found that 6 member states, so those are Croatia, Cyprus, Estonia, Italy, Lithuania, and Spain, correctly calculated their increased energy savings obligation. So as Margot explained, the stepwise approach from 1.3 to 1.9%, and also the cumulative objective. We have other member states such as Slovakia that are naming several energy savings obligation objective. So here it was a bit difficult to say that they correctly calculated, because we didn't have one number and one year by year number, and also some member states did some mistakes in the calculation, so that led to difference. But really, those 6 member states adapted their energy savings obligation according to the increased rate, which is in a sense good, because they didn't wait for the final update. And even though their plans were sometimes, such as Spain, submitted only a couple of months after the new ED was agreed upon, they already took into account the increased rate. So that was good to see. Of course, this is 6 out of 15, so more needs to be done, and there's definitely things to improve for the final update. When it comes to the measure, we really see that there's a very wide discrepancy on the way the measures are described. In some of the plans, it's very briefly described. There's sometimes not even an assessment of the expected energy savings coming from those measures. In other plans, it's very detailed, it's well explained. There's an explanation how does this measure will be put into place, what savings are expected, which national law is going to put this measure into practice, with which funding stream. So sometimes very well explained, which is good. But we already see, and this is just general trend, it still is little details on the conformity of the policy measures with the Annex 5 rules, whether the existing measures or the existing rules or the new rules that were updated with the last EED recast. So here as well, it's a bit difficult, because you would like a bit more, let's say, details on how the policy measures function with the materiality and the additionality principle within the energy savings obligation. The last point I wanted to mention here, which is for me a very important one, for us a very important one, and as both Sam and Margot explained, a really key part of the new energy savings obligation is the new sub-target for energy poverty. Unfortunately, we see that this is almost never quantified in the 15 plans that we analyzed. It is often recognized that this target exists and has been added with the new EED, but either there is an explanation that there is no exact number of the amount of the population which is in energy poverty, which therefore doesn't lead to the possibility of quantifying the amount of energy savings that needs to be achieved in this group, or there's no specific measures for those groups that are being presented and introduced in the plans. The only exception for that is actually Cyprus, that does quantify the sub-targets, but on the other hand doesn't have very clear policy measures to make sure that those savings are being delivered among that group. So this is a very high level result. We have detailed annexes country by country, especially on Article 8. So if you have any questions and wondering how all the member state color on the map are introducing the new energy savings obligation or generate the new ED, you can check our report and also come back to me with any questions.
Thanks a lot, Antona. I think that's very useful to have this state of play, how we stand by now, let's say in the middle of the course until the final NECP due by June next year. As you said, let's say someone may say that it looks a bit bad for the moment, but don't forget that the deadline to submit the NECPR was just before the new ED was officially adopted in July. So it also explains why that there is some delay in the transcription of that into the National Energy and Climate Plan. And I'm sure that Christos, you can follow up on that. You're from an implementing body, CRES. So I would be curious to see how, from this point of view, how do you see these changes and the challenges of it?
Thank you, Jean-Sebastian. Hello to everyone. Yes, I will try to present the challenges having experience both as administrator of the Energy Efficiency Obligation Scheme and as a technical assistant of the ministry in order to design and implement measures, especially for the new Article 8. First of all, the positive message is that the new ED provides a holistic framework in order to promote energy efficiency. It includes a lot of interesting and innovative, let's say, elements, tools, mechanisms. So yes, it's an opportunity in order to fulfill all these these ambitious and higher energy efficiency targets. Okay. Greece is a country that had a deviation in achieving the previous Article 7 target in the previous period. And of course, the imposition of a new target creates some concerns. And the problem for this is obviously the lack of public funds. Obviously, the public funds are not sufficient. Despite the considerable progress that have been made in order to design more cost-effective measures, etc., and to handle with a more efficient way the existing funds. But it is obvious that we have to initiate a more innovative financing schemes. It's very good for the new ED that foresee the implementation for on-bill financing, on-tax financing, but I need more emphasis required in order to facilitate the access to financing for all end users. And perhaps the provision of guarantees. I think it is important to increase the leverage of the private actors. Of course, we have the problem with energy poverty. Another positive outcome, of course, was the targeted alleviation of energy poverty, but without solving the problem about how to finance this, and especially for Article 7, it's very good that we have a proposal by the European Commission about how the member states should calculate as an average of the 4 indicators. But especially for Article 8, it's very difficult to identify and verify with a bottom-up approach the energy poor households. It is something that is required because the utilized 4 indicators includes one subjective and another 2, which is very difficult to verify it. So somehow we have to streamline and to provide the technical assistance about how this will be achieved. From my understanding, the market-based instruments such as EOS, energy efficiency auctions, is, let's say, the most important instrument in order to fulfill the target with a cost-effective way. And okay, it's good that we managed to improve materiality. I have concerns for the additionality. I have a lot of concerns about the eco-design because, yes, it's a very useful instrument, but it cannot address the problem that many countries they have, which is that the end users prefer keeping the equipment for a longer period than the respective one which is foreseen during our simulations. Yes, when the end user will decide to replace the equipment, he will buy perhaps, he will buy a more efficient product equipment, but this perhaps is not the case for the examined period. And of course, ETS2. I think that the design of the ETS2 must be done in this way in order to avoid the overlaps with the EOs. For me, yes, both of them must be applied. And for me, it's very important to retain the obligation to the end user because we have additional benefits due to their direct involvement in the consumers and the provision of energy services. So I'm trying to present some positive, let's say, messages. I think the finance is the most important problem, and I think somehow we have to maximize the synergies with RES. With RES, we have the issue that we have already as a country establish a support scheme, which cost, let's say, in Greece now it's approximately 2 billion euro on annual basis in order to support correctly the penetration of RES. And when we started discussion about how we will find the funds for the energy efficiency, the politicians say that we do not want to create additional burden to the households because the households pay currently 2 billion totally on annual basis. So this for me is the problem, and perhaps this must be solved centrally at EU level because the existing funds are not sufficient. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think the message is clear about funding. Maybe that could open later an open discussion about the use of the Recovery and Resilience Fund. Maybe just as a start, but I've noted many points, and the ones you mentioned about the having the target for alleviating energy poverty is fine, but how to make it happen, how to target the households, that's also a topic that we will cover next year in ENSMOV Plus. So yes, definitely that's important. So we see that it's not so easy to go on the road to 2030. We have seen that there are some delays in the draft NECP update. So now coming back to you, Margot, maybe you can tell us a bit what are the expectations towards the final NECP, so the update, so what will come next year. So we've seen that the draft NECP update, the deadline was at the moment that everything was moving, so it was probably a bit difficult to get everything updated already. So how do you see it for next June?
Thank you, Jean-Sébastien, and many thanks to my predecessor speakers because it was very useful and referring directly what Anton presented, this useful assessment of the so far submitted NECPs, draft NECPs. I just wanted to say that the Commission is, of course, working also on reassessment, and on our side, we will issue this assessment by mid-September, and well, probably it will cover 21, maybe 22 NECP, draft NECPs if submitted. 21 for the moment. We are expecting one more. And it will be composed of the EU-wide assessment and the country-specific assessment in the staff working documents, and accompanied with the recommendations. So what we will recommend, you will see soon, but basically the expectation is indeed that member states take into account both the high ambition and also how to achieve this ambition, so detail and quantify the measures through which they will achieve it. As Antonin highlighted, several member states that submitted already took into account this higher ambition, despite it was not It was not actually in force yet, because the deadline was before the entry into force of the EED recast. So that's very, very good, a positive result that those member states already took into account the revised directive. On measures, they were a little bit less, as you said, Antonin, less detailed, and the quantification didn't necessarily bring to the level of ambition. And yes, energy poverty is the element we would really expect that is enhanced in the final NECPs. For this relevant element is the recommendation on energy poverty that the Commission issued, and that is complementing, all the energy poverty related provisions, further explaining them. And I hope this will help for member states to define the measures that will be targeting energy poverty also under Article 8. So the recommendations are recalling the legal framework, the definitions, the distinction between what is energy poverty, what are vulnerable consumers, because we have different concepts in different legislation, but we have one single definition of energy poverty, which is in the EED. And this one should be always, considered to determine the share, the number of households that are really affected by energy poverty. We are clear indicators to which I already referred to, which are provided by Eurostat on income and living conditions, and those should be considered for defining these shares. And based on this, as said, the share for energy savings under Article 8 will also need to be defined. As regards the measures, the recommendation on energy poverty provide a very useful distinction between what are the structural measures and what are the affordability measures. And of course, we are aiming at structural and encouraging those. The affordability measures should be short-term and should be targeted really to the specific target groups, but they should be short-term because they are not solving the root causes of the problem, but they are just doing some income support, and this should be temporary. So yes, basically we count very much on this element to be enhanced in the final NECPs, of which the deadline is in June 2030. Sorry, 2024. Sorry, 30 of June 2024. And that will be indeed the first milestone in terms of planning and commitment from member state in terms of ambition and measures, right? And then the next steps and milestones, formally speaking, we have, of course, the transposition deadline that's on 11 of October 2025. And then from there, the Commission will be analyzing how member states transpose the provisions into the national legislation. And as regards the implementation, we have the milestones of checking within the governance process. So we have the NECPRs, National Energy and Climate Plan reporting reports, which are biannual. So now we had in 2023, the next one will be 2025. This one was still considered 2 years before, so 2022 or 2023,
Margot,
so it's relevant for reporting ED recast.
Excuse me, Margot, but
Yes?
your sound is a bit disconnected from time to time. Maybe try without your camera, just to see if the sound will be better. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm very sorry as well. I'm
the sound
really
is
the
better,
closest possible to my internet box, but it's
No,
still
Now
not working.
we hear you clear now. That's perfect.
Okay, so yeah, maybe just to repeat, the milestones for implementation are the NECPRs, and we have the biannual NECPRs, and there we will be checking how member states put on the ground all these provisions. So not only in the national legislations, but also what are the measures put on the ground, what are the enabling frameworks and mechanisms that will help achieving these ambitions and the objectives of these measures. So NECPRs that will be relevant for EED recast, the first one will be in 2027, because this one will be analyzing the period 2024-2025. So that's the first, let's say, period of action of the EED recast, and then 2029 any CPR relevant to the period 2026-2027. So I think that this is all in terms of formal steps of checking the compliance and transposition. Now, we have, of course, informal dialogue with member states, with some structural dialogue, permanent structures of dialogue, like EED committee meetings, like concerted action on EED, where we are regularly meeting and discussing with member states, sharing best practice and trying to help member states to implement effectively these provisions. So yeah, that's everything from our side. What we can do.
No, that's I think that's very good also to have this view about what's coming next, what are the next deadlines also beyond the final NCP next year, because as you explained, that's a whole process that will continue between now and 2030, and that's very important to see that, yes, okay, now it should look a big mountain in front of us, but there are tools to climb and reach the top at the end. So hopefully everybody will meet there. We have only a few minutes left. There have been some discussions in the chat about energy audits, but I will let it in the chat because there are experts among the participants, and that's yes, there are connections with the energy savings obligation for sure, but that's a bit more specific. We have spoken about the member state, the policy side, let's say the public body side of it, but for results to be achieved, that also required some stakeholder involvement. So I would like for the last round of questions today to turn to that, and maybe the best way to start with you, Antona, as you represent quite a group of stakeholders. So, how do you see their involvement? First, are they happy with the changes, and how do they see their role in the implementation coming from next year and the achievement of the targets?
Of course, I'll try to be quick. As you say, we don't have a lot of time, but of course we will be active checking. As Margot said, the NECPRs are a very important moment as well to check what has been done on the ground. And we also have members that have national members that are checking also what's happening, the measures that are being introduced. We already asked for their feedback when we did our report to say, for example, there is this measure they propose in this member state. Do you think it's credible? Do you think it's that makes sense in terms of the explanation of the measure of the expected energy savings? Of course, then it's hard to get let's say a feel for every single measure that is presented, because sometimes it's very specific, or it's not let's say it's not under the eye of a lot of national partners. But yes, we will be very active checking the implementation, checking that we're making progress on the way to the 2030 target. And I think I would like also to end with that, is that, as Margot said, we have now a final energy consumption target at EU level, which is binding in the new ED, which is very good. But unfortunately, we still have national energy efficiency contribution that are still indicative. So it remains that the energy savings obligation is a very important tool to get for every member state to their 2030 national energy efficiency contribution, because really the energy saving obligation is the binding requirement to deliver and use energy savings every year. So I really think, and I want to end on this, that yeah, for me, the energy saving obligation remains a core part of the ED, and will be very active to check the progress of the measure implemented.
No, that's all clear. Thanks a lot, Antona. And coming back to you, Christos, you mentioned earlier the issue of lack of public funding. So clearly, I read between the lines that you expect stakeholders to step in and to be involved. So as an agency, how do you see their roles, and not only the market players, but maybe also other stakeholders like local authorities?
Correct. The involvement of all stakeholders is essential in order to fulfill this target, and it's important to create the conditions. We see that the new ED expand the framework of the involved stakeholders, We see that energy communities can contribute to achieving the target of Article 8. We see that the transmission system or operators are eligible to be designated as obligated parties. We see the establishment of energy partnerships with the participation of all experts, professionals, etc. So it's very good because we have to involve all the stakeholders. And yes, it is crucial and important, the role of the municipalities, not only to implement the measures. It's very good that we show a specific obligation in order to reduce the consumption on annual basis, but they have to undertake the role as exemplary body in order to increase the information, to provide technical support. So perhaps the establishment one-stop shops can facilitate all these targets, and in the final to exploit effectively all the resources in order to fulfill this ambitious target.
Thanks, Christos. I think you mentioned very well some new provisions indeed that are meant to involve the further stakeholders like TSO, transmission system operators, energy communities, the local partnerships as part of obligation schemes and so on. So that's a very good summary. And let's see how the stakeholders appropriate also this new legislation and to be active and deliver on their side. Now, Margot, maybe to conclude, you mentioned at the beginning that your expertise is also with Article 29 and energy services, and Sam mentioned earlier the main interactions with the other articles of the directive, but let's focus on that one to conclude, because first we should remind that the EED comes after the energy services directive. So actually the first promotion of energy efficiency obligation scheme was to promote the development of energy savings market. And second, you probably have noticed very well what Christos mentioned earlier, that there is a lack of funding and we need some more innovative mechanisms for funding. So I'm sure that you can say a word on that to conclude this webinar.
Thank you, Jean-Sébastien. I must say for this we could design a separate webinar because there is so much to talk and to innovate in this field. I must say that market creating potential is maybe the most exciting dimension from my point of view of these provisions on energy savings and energy efficiency obligation schemes, when they are indeed interpreted in conjunction with the supporting schemes for energy service providers development, energy performance contracting development. So these are the provisions of Article 29, supporting basically the business case of energy efficiency. So treating energy efficiency as an investment that pays off, and that there is a third party that will provide financing, which will be then paid off by the guaranteed energy savings. So that's the underlying assumption. The directive see clear the role of such service providers like ESCOs, like energy performance contracting service providers, to drive the market. It creates the regulatory constraint by the energy savings obligation on the obliged parties to create the market that will be kind of artificial. It's something very similar to ETS, how it works. And in cases of member states that implemented energy efficiency obligation schemes together with white certificate schemes, so using these market instruments to trade energy savings, that would be the, let's say, the structure how we would see ideally this market to operate. So ESCOs being the intermediary providing energy savings to fulfill the obligation that is laying on the obliged parties, and all of this functioning within the market framework where the instruments like white certificates are being traded, exchanged on the primary and secondary market, and that there is a real value created, market value created for energy efficiency improvements. So that's really a very nice setup. well, we didn't see this in reality fully operating. Those 3 member states that actually adopted white certificate scheme, we must say, okay, the instruments exist, they are there, they are effective. The liquidity of the market is very little. I mean, they are not very much traded. Clearly, there is no secondary market developed, but okay, maybe we can further think for the future how to strengthen this market dimension, how to better link. Both actions on the supply and demand side are certainly needed, and that's what the directive is doing, because looking at the actors that or ESCOs that need to be present on the market to deliver the savings, and also on the demand side, creating the obligation that will be triggering and creating the need for savings. So very interesting, and I hope having in the future interesting discussions on this and new policy development in this field.
No, thanks a lot, Margot. I think that's a perfect words of conclusion. That's also make a nice transition to the workshop we'll have in December in Paris, because that's focused on obligation scheme. And in the afternoon, we will have market players explaining how they reach out to their final customers with within this session, a special focus on so part of the session dedicated to reach out to energy poor households. So that will be, I think, very interesting. That match also what was mentioned by Christos earlier. So I really looking forward to meet you in Paris, or if you cannot, you will be able to attend online as well. And please, before leaving, also click on in the chat on the survey. We are a European project, so we need also ourselves to report, and that's above all useful for us to improve over time. So take just a few seconds to answer these quick questions. That would be very useful to us. And I thank you very much to stay until the end. We used a bit more minutes, but I think it was really worth it. I thank very much all our speakers and panelists today. I think that there was a lot of information to get from this webinar. It was recorded, so you can also share with your colleagues or contacts who can be interested the recordings in a few days, and we will also put the presentation files on the website. With that, I wish you a very end of the day. Thanks a lot again for attending, and to all our speakers. And yes, let's move to implementation and achieve the targets. Have a good end of the week. Bye-bye.